Park and Walkway, the land exchange with Massey University, and we'll go to our first one, which is Kim Bergerson, number 22. Kim, welcome. Page 270 of your papers, councillors.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Bergerson. I'm a resident of Clifton Terrace and have been for about 25 years, so I know the area and the tracks reasonably well. I'd like to start with saying I'm not against Massey gaining legal access to the land for future sale. However, I think there is another option that achieves the outcome while protecting the interests of local track users. Moving on to the easements. Easement 2 is highly valued and used regularly as direct access between Edify Park and Bledisloe Park. I use it personally probably once or twice a week. High maintenance costs due to erosion and slips have been highlighted as a reason for its eventual closure. Since the current slip was bypassed, all the maintenance that I can see has been spent on gravel and water management at the top of the track adjacent to the Massey land, and some remedial work at the bottom of the track on some steps. So I can't see a lot of work that's been done and completed due to erosion and slip since the original slip. Easement 3 track would be really nice to have, but will require significant capital to develop. The top of the track is a watercourse after heavy rain. The middle section is prone to slips and currently has a slip on it. And the bottom section floods. The bottom section exits inside the stop bank of the Turitea stream, which floods, if not every year, every second year. There's also standing water at the bottom of the track for a couple of months in the winter due to poor drainage. So I think there is potential that this track will be closed for periods of time when the stream is flooded, and it will still require substantial maintenance. My concern under the current proposal is that easement 2 will not be fully maintained and forced to close before easement 3 is developed. Easement 3 hasn't yet been planned or funded. Moving on to the areas, Area 1, which the council gains as part of the land swap, adds little real value. The trees there are already part of Edify Park, and Area 1 is unlikely to be used by park visitors. I think the lawnmower will also have difficulty accessing this area. Area 1 is of more value to a developer and therefore, in my view, Massey. The solution I propose is the council swap with Massey only that section of Area 2 that crosses 91 Edify Road. This allows them legal access to their land. The council retains the rest of Area 2 and any required easement to ensure the public keeps this vital walking connection. Area 2 and the track is continued to be maintained, and this will allow funding and design of easement 3 to be better planned. Finally, why I understand traffic impacts aren't part of this land exchange decision, they will be significant if this area is developed for housing, which is highly likely. I encourage council to start that work now so that any developer understands the infrastructure upgrades required before proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. There are no questions. Appreciate you submitting and speaking to your submission. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next submitter is number 30, and that's on page 278 of your papers. And I invite up Andy Ellison, Estates Director, and Murray Adams from Massey University.
Tēnā tātou, kua hui mai nei ki tēnei hui. My name is Andy Allison. I'm Executive Director of Estates at Massey University, based on the Manawatu campus. Massey University has a long-standing relationship with the council in supporting the city's walkways in and around our Manawatu campus. And I'm delighted to be here today to confirm our support for the Atafai Park and Walkway Land Exchange. We understand that this hearing is to address the exchange of the land, which addresses an area of landlocked Massey farmland and to recognise instances where the playground and walkway extend into Massey-owned land. There's been a problem with land access since 1981 when Massey gave areas of land to the city for the park and the walkway, inadvertently landlocking our upper terrace farmland and effectively cutting this land off with no legal access through from the Massey land at 91 Atafai Road. It's worth noting that the fence lines that are in place do not necessarily reflect the property boundaries. There are instances where the playground and walkway extend into the Massey-owned land. The land exchange will correct these irregularities. If the land transfer is approved, Massey is intending to lodge a subdivision application to correct these boundary anomalies and to separate the upper terrace as a rural lot. The subdivision will also support the continued leasing of this area for livestock grazing. To summarise, what we're intending to do as part of the consenting process, Massey will formalise the Atafai Road access way with an easement through the property at 91 Atafai Road. This will ensure the public may continue to use this as an alternative pedestrian access to the walkway and park. The existing council access for pedestrians is further down Atafai Road and is certainly less well known. As part of the land exchange, council will transfer the current strip of walkway land that is preventing Massey from having legal access to the landlocked upper terrace farmland. Massey will transfer land to the council that will increase the area surrounding the playground equipment. This includes some well-established trees that add to the park surroundings. Through the granting of an easement, Massey will support the ongoing use of the current Atafai walkway until such time as the council is ready to construct the new gully track. That will protect public access through the area. Massey will establish an easement for a new track to be located on Massey land, which will allow the future development of a fully formed council track that will run down the gully and escarpment through to the Massey Arboretum to connect with the Bledisloe Park walkway. This will link Bledisloe Park all the way through to Springdale Reserve. I would like to stress that this land exchange is not a proposal for a change in land use, nor for any development for the Massey-owned farmland. The land will remain in rural zoning, with all the existing protections for rural land remaining in place as covered by the city's district plan. The council and Massey have been discussing this problem for quite some time, and we are pleased to be collaborating on a proposal that we see as a win-win for both the city and the university. Ka nui te mihi, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Kia ora koutou, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Andy. There are no questions. Oh no, sorry, we do. Councillor Harpiter, online.
Thank you, Andy. Just one question, just to make sure we're quite clear. One submitter did say that they were worried about you wanting to put it into the use of putting it into housing, and you're definitely clear that you're not going to be doing that.
We have no plans to do that at all. It's not to say that in future we wouldn't consider divesting ourselves of the land, which is in line with our current practice of reducing our footprint and divesting ourselves of surplus land, but at the moment we have no plans to do so.
Thank you for being very clear. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, our third submitter is not here, so we will look to recommendations here that we receive the submissions we've heard from presenters, indicate their wish to be heard in support of their submissions, and that council note the procedure for hearings of submissions as described in the procedure sheet. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any comments to that? There being none, we will vote. it's 15 votes. Yep, so it's 15, it's unanimous, 15 votes to none, thank you. All right. We'll now go to, we might as well go to number 17, and I'll invite Kathy Deva-Todd and Perrine Green up, please. And this is number 17, it's 297 of your papers, and this is around the summary of the submissions and deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. We will take the report as read. As indicated in the report, we said we would make any comment on any matters that are raised by submitters that are inconsistent with matters covered in the report. In general, that hasn't occurred at this meeting, so our advice still stands. Just bring to Councillors' attention, one submitter made a comment about the condition of easement 3. We acknowledge that it is currently an undrained farm track, and our intention would be to put intercept draining in a track surface, which would resolve the issues that have been raised about the condition for walking. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. There are a number. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. Just to be clear in my mind today, by approving this, we're not guaranteeing that we will transition to easement 3. We're giving ourselves the option for future annual budgets or long-term plans to do that. Is that correct?
By agreeing to this today, you will get easement 3.
Yes.
Whether you develop easement 3 or not will be a matter at a later date. We will still continue with easement 2 and the walking track there. However, councillors, it would be very difficult for us to maintain that access if another slip occurred, so you may want to consider that as part of your LTP process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to, can you just draw my attention to the indicative costs to develop the easement 3?
So we haven't done a financial cost for that, but typically it's not going to be a large cost. I would say, up to 50,000, but we would consider that as part of our normal walkways development budget and prioritise that against other walkway development for other areas in the city.
Have we got any estimate numbers or that people are using that current walkway now? Have we got any track stats?
No, we don't. So in terms of our existing walkway, sorry, just to clarify, or the existing farm track on Massey land, because both are actually being used currently by the community. And you can see, if you look on an aerial photograph, the wear pattern of the grass that both are being used. Certainly the section that comes down the hill is more difficult for some people to navigate than the other access which comes off by the water tower. But we don't have a walkway counter in that section. We only have walkway counters down in Bledisloe Park.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Isabella.
Thank you, and thanks, Kathy. I had a question just of clarification. On the figure 2, where easement 2 is marked out, I use that track quite a lot. It didn't seem to be matching with the descriptions of the difficulty of maintenance and safety issues, because that, to me, what's marked out is the sort of well-formed track that goes between the end of the tricky track and goes behind the houses and joins up with Atawhai Park, whereas the more dangerous and difficult aspect of the path seemed to be further back.
That is correct. You are quite correct that easement 2 is an easy walking track across relatively level land, but it's the only way to get from there down to Bledisloe is through a difficult section of track.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Kathy. Just so the landlock issue, could it be resolved simply by granting Massey some easements through our land and then not actually having the cost of developing a new track?
So can I ask you to just explain a little bit more what you're asking me? So perhaps in reference to the...
I may or may not have the detail of this right, but it seems like we're giving some land to Massey and then getting an easement back to solve a landlock issue. Could we not just give Massey an easement to solve the landlock issue straight up for them and not incur the cost of having to build more tracks and do all that?
Yeah, so what we're doing here, councillors, is a land exchange under the Reserves Act. And under a land exchange, you exchange areas of equal value. So that's the mechanism we're using here for this particular issue. In relation to the easement issue, take you back to the original report that talked about, this is something that occurred in 1981, and I actually wrote a letter to Massey, back in the 1990s, to acknowledge on behalf of council that this was an error at the time the reserve was made. We had various changes of management in the interim period. It was always intended that we would resolve this, and we would resolve this in a correct and proper way. And this was an error at the time. So if we were to do what you're suggesting, that wouldn't actually fulfil the intent of what we said we would do right at the time the error was first picked up.
Right, so an easement isn't a right and proper resolution of anything?
No, it isn't. An easement in favour of Massey across council land is not a right and proper solution to the issue here.
Thanks. My second question then is, given Massey's just withdrawn public access to the track up to Ferguson Hall, what assurance does the community have that these easements would be enduring?
So just to correct that, it is not Massey University that has withdrawn the access, it is the trust that own the hostel. That is their land, and they have the ability to stop people going through it. They have allowed the public in the past, so Massey has had no involvement in that decision. It has been between council, have been advised by the trust.
Great, thanks. So just to get to the second part of that question then, around what assurance we have that the easements that would be granted here would be enduring?
The easements are legal instruments. The access up to Ferguson Hall was an agreement. It wasn't illegal, so will have legal rights. Both parties will have legal rights.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kathy and Pareen, thank you. Okay, colleagues, we have a number of recommendations there, and one is around council approving the land exchange for Massey University in accordance with section 138 of the LGA, noting that the land being exchanged to Massey University from council would be approximately 564 square metres of lot DP 48076. B, the land being exchanged to council from the university would be approximately 541 square metres of part section 208TN of Fitzherbert. C, council would receive easements, one over lot 11 DP 18880, that's 91 Atawhai Road, legalising the existing walking path access to Atawhai Park. 2, over part section 208TN of Fitzherbert, retaining legal access of the existing walkway from Atawhai Park to Bledisloe Park. And 3, a new easement over part section 208TN of Fitzherbert, allowing for a future walkway to be developed from Springdale Park to Bledisloe Park. I'm happy to move all of those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I think colleagues, and I appreciate the submitters coming in and those that have submitted online. There was a good summary there, and obviously the vast majority of submitters were in favour, with 24, 4 against, 7 remained unsure, and I think the unsurety came through in some of the questions around the access to the track, the conditions, and the future of what that land might be. And appreciate Massey have given us a firm answer on that from their perspective. But of course, if it did get sold to somebody else, I suppose that might be a bit different. But look, I'm happy at this stage, it makes sense and continues access to that part of the city. So, are there any other comments? There being none, we will vote. That's passed, 15 votes for, none against. We'll do number 18 while we've got Perrine in the house. Fitzherbert Park, proposal to grant easement to power deliberations report. Perrine, if you could come down, that's page 317 of papers.
Afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councillors again. I just thought I would just do a quick summary of the report and a bit of background. So we are seek councillors' approval on to grant an easement to PowerCo at Fitzherbert Park, located close to the cricket grandstand. PowerCo are planning to do some improvements to the existing transformer on site. If you recall, we did have a report to come to council in September to consult on this proposal. Following the consultation, there was no submitters. Our recommendation today is to proceed with the granting of easement to PowerCo. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Perrine. There are none, thank you. All right. Recommendations to council that we grant an easement to convey electricity at Fitzherbert Park on 272 Fitzherbert Avenue, Palmerston North, to PowerCo. That council note the land area affected by the easement for PowerCo is described as Lot 2 DP 77988. Again, colleagues, I think this is relatively academic. There's already a transformer there, and I think you can see the images on pages 317 and 318. We've got to do this if we want things to be powered up, so I'm happy to move this. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and there being no comments, we'll vote, please. That's passed, 16 votes for, none against. All right, we're jumping around a bit, people, so apologies for that. We're now going back to the substantive part of our public meeting, 8, which is around the adoption of elected members' remuneration for 2025-26, and Sarah Claridge will present that paper. That's page 33 of your documents. Sarah, over to you.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. The Remuneration Authority has set its remuneration for the councillors. This money, or this remuneration, must be spent, and there's also a requirement that any additional responsibilities for roles gets listed and gets sent to the authority. Those proposed lists are listed in tables 1 and 2 of the report. So a workshop of elected members was to consider the remuneration was run in October. From that it was discussed around increasing the base pay for elected members, increasing the salary for the role of Deputy Mayor, and also discussion was around increasing the chair's payments for the monthly and the quarterly chair of committees. There was also discussion around paying the deputy chairs of committees. So the report provides three options for you to consider. In each option, we have increased the base pay for all elected members to allow for a more flat structure to occur. There's been an increase in the deputy mayor's payments and also an increase in the chair for the committees, for the monthly committees and the quarterly committees. So the first option also allows for payment for the chair of the hearings committee, which will meet as required. The second option allows for deputy chairs of committees to be paid. And the third option allows for a greater increase in the base pay for all elected members. So we haven't offered a preferred option. We'll leave that for the council to decide. But in terms of next steps, once the decision has been made, we will inform the Remuneration Authority and they will likely gazette it in December, and then you will receive your back pay in January. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Could I just make one comment? And I think, I'm sorry, I'll ask a question, which starts with a little bit of a comment. On all of them, it says councillor with no additional responsibilities. I think it really should be something along the line of councillor with general responsibilities, because all councillors do stuff. Yeah, I think that needs to be changed on whatever option that we pick. And I know it's always difficult picking your own pay, but can that happen?
That is the wording from the Remuneration Authority. So,
is it?
Yes, we better stick to it.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. We could submit to them. They don't always get everything right anyway. Councillor Bowen.
My questions are very much along the same lines, Mr. Mayor. So what would be the process to suggest that that's an unhelpful definition?
The Remuneration Authority do offer an opportunity for councils to submit to them in terms of how they work out the remuneration pool. They do that annually? Yes, annually. So when that time comes, we can make sure that you have an opportunity to raise it then.
We couldn't just put our preferred definition in brackets and go, you say that, but this is what we think it means?
We can try, but I guess the wording's more around trying to, in terms of just outlining the additional responsibilities that the extra salary or extra remuneration is going for those roles that have been allocated. So,
I'll just get the CE to comment.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, we'll just, we've got the point noted. We'll take a look at it and see how it is that we can include that in any response back to them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Sarah. So I see that there's an estimate of the amount of hours that are indicated to be associated with each role in the paper. So how have you calculated the extra amount for each role? Is it on an hourly rate, or I suppose the question is, have the number of hours been taken into account when calculating the additional pay?
yes, they have.
So how have you done that?
It's a good question. I'm going to pass it to the Governance Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So rather than the total number of hours being an hourly rate, what we have tried to do is be proportionate to total number of meetings for chairs in particular, and calculate and establish a meeting rate and then make sure that's proportionate depending on whether it was a monthly chair or a quarterly chair.
Okay, so rather than on the estimated amount of hours, it's a meeting rate, depending on how often the meeting.
Correct, but for the
is set.
purposes of the Remuneration Authority, we do need to explain how each role is relative to each other, and one way to do that is by showing that we would expect one role to have more hours than the other.
Okay, no, that explains it, because if you calculate an hourly rate, it's a very low hourly rate, and so I couldn't work out how you would come up with the figures. Okay, thank you. And in terms of the proposal for the number 3 proposal, I think it is, option 3, for the higher overall base pay, how did that relate to the workshop and the things that were discussed in the workshop? Because it doesn't seem to fit in with the general agreement on the deputy mayor having a higher salary, for example. That seems to have a reduction. I'm just wondering how that was generated as a result of the workshop.
I think you're correct. It wasn't generated as a result of the workshop. It's just providing you another way of looking at how you may wish to allocate the amount that's available to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. That's the questions gone. Look, colleagues, this is always hard to do your own pay, so look, just bear with me here. Thank you to the officers for putting up all 3 options. I think all 3 could possibly work. I'm going to put up option 1, and I'll look for a seconder on that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. And I do want to actually ask officers to have a crack at changing the very, very crude wording of no additional responsibilities. It's very evident that colleagues are at everything. I mean, you know what you do through the weekly reports that come out. So to say no additional responsibilities, I think it's a bit of a. It's not great. It's not great for the public to see that, and I don't think that's very true at all. It might be true in a financial sense, but actually what you're actually doing in reality is quite different. So I'll put that option up and invite any commentary. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And firstly, I'd just like to express my appreciation for the opportunity to actually have a workshop and have a full discussion with elected members on this issue, which I think is always helpful before things come into the chamber, particularly when there is a sensitive nature to that. And I do think that the summary in this paper fairly reflects that discussion, and in particular the desire to have perhaps a flatter structure. So I think looking at the 3 options in this paper is a minimal change in between each one, but in looking at it a little bit further, my preference is for either option 2 or 3, primarily for the reason of the issue that's raised on page 36 under clause 3.8, where the remuneration for the chair of hearings committee has not been included, noting that the chair is paid when acting in their capacity of chair of any panel. So from my perspective, if we went with option 1, there could be a perception of a bit of a double up there if there is an allocation for on both those accounts. So for that reason, my preference is either option 2 or 3, on the basis that option 3 offers the flattest structure. If option 1 is not successful, I'd be happy to propose option 3. Basically for the reason that is the flatter structure. I think we all come here as equals, and my view is that the workload as much as possible should be shared, acknowledging there is an additional responsibility for chairs and deputy chairs, but I think each individual elected member determines their own workload in their own way, and it's not always associated with whether they're chair or deputy chair. So from that perspective, I am more comfortable with a higher base rate and a flatter structure, and I think option 3 does provide that.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just thinking. I'm supporting option 1, and thank you for bringing that forward, Mr. Mayor. I think it does reflect the general tone of the conversation that we had in workshop. I particularly think it's important that the chair of the hearings committee receives recompense for the work of chairing a committee, which is not the same as the work of chairing a hearing. So that's wonderful that the chair of the hearing gets paid for doing that, but chairing the hearing committee is not that. And if we're asking somebody to do a job which is a chair of a committee, then they should be paid for doing that. So the structure that's put forward, I think, enables us to recognise those significant additional work that goes into chairing, whether that's monthly or quarterly or ad hoc, as the hearings committee will be. I don't love it being described as a meeting fee, because the work of a chair goes beyond the meeting itself. There are things like chairs' meetings that also fall within the remit of that, the additional community expectation of attendance at events that sits particularly with our externally focused chairs. But that's the language that we're in. I think changing the language doesn't change the outcome, and I'd support option 1 for those reasons. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to Councillor Bowen, if you read on page 29 the terms of reference of the hearing committee, quite rightly, it is not about actually running and being the chair of said hearing. It's about updating on matters likely to be heard, updating progress on district plan matters, legal proceedings, providing a list of elected members of which hearing panels can be formed, but also on point 3, to hear and agree matters to bus shelter locations. And those of us around the table at the last term recall we had several, quite in some cases complicated, bus shelter hearings in this chamber. And so that is a piece of work that is delegated to the hearings committee and would not be paid separately as to an actual plan change hearing. And so of that piece of work alone, I think that deserves some degree of recompensation. It's not a significant amount being proposed, but I think it's appropriate. As for the Deputy Chair's discussion, as many of you know, I'm sympathetic to that, but what I find odd in proposal 2 is it says, whether you're the Deputy Chair, if you're the Chair of a monthly meeting, you'll get paid higher than a Chair of a quarterly meeting. We can all agree that makes sense. But if you're Deputy Chair of a monthly meeting or Deputy Chair of a quarterly meeting, you get paid the same. Well, if we agree in principle that monthly chairs are doing more, then we should agree in principle that monthly deputy chairs would be doing more. And so option 2, I don't think strikes the right balance there. I mean, given the material difference of $500, look, if we're talking $2,000 or $3,000 here, I think we should get into more of a debate. But materially, the difference between the base rate we're debating between option 1 and option 3 is $400, and I don't think it's awfully significant, so I'll support option 1.
Councillor Johnson.
Well, I don't support option 3, that's the first thing to say, because that one has a reduction in pay for the Deputy Mayor, and I'm pretty certain that we all agreed in the workshop, which I understand isn't a decision-making forum, but it seemed to me that there was widespread agreement that the role of the Deputy Mayor is a significant workload, a significant responsibility, and should be paid at a significantly higher rate. So on that basis, I would support 1 or 2. And then when it comes down to the difference between 1 and 2, I think that the higher base rate covers the work of a deputy, because I don't believe that a deputy to a committee has any more preparation work than an ordinary member of the committee. You have to read the papers. You don't have to be accountable to the public in the same way. You may have to, I understand you may have to deputise for a chair at a meeting, but it doesn't happen often. So I would have thought that the higher base rate accounts for that. And in terms of the, and here I am talking about my own pay, which is awkward, but anyway, I would say this whether it was me or not. But in terms of the additional pay for the hearings committee, it is additional work that wouldn't be remunerated otherwise, and there's no getting away from that. So if we're talking about whether or not chairs should be paid for chairing meetings, then it seems to me only logical that there would be at least some payment, albeit not large, for being a chair of that particular committee. So I'd be supporting option 1, and you know, as a fallback, I would support option 2, I suppose, but I definitely wouldn't support option 3 because of the reduced payment for the Deputy Mayor. Thanks.
All right. Councillor, you've already spoken.
Just a question of clarification, because the comment's been made that option 3, it's a pay reduction for the Deputy Mayor, but I thought it was a 3,500 increase, and I just wonder if it would be useful to clarify that, given the comments that have been made.
Just to clarify that, what I was talking about is relative to the other options, it's a reduction, not that it's a reduction on what the Deputy Mayor was paid previously.
Okay. Does that clarify everybody? Good. Okay. Okay, colleagues, look, the difference is $750 so out of this, so it's minor. So look, I've got the recommendations up there. It's your guys' pay, so please vote accordingly. As passed, 15 votes for and 1 against. All right. We'll move through to number 9, which is around the appointment for Cedar Electoral College and Local Government New Zealand Zone 3. We've done these separately because they are coming up in very recent coming weeks, so they'll miss that that window for the bigger amount of external appointments. So I'll ask, it's on page 41 of our papers, councillors. I'll ask Hannah, our governance manager, to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think you've pretty much covered it. The intention being that these appointments don't need to be made. There are actually roles to do in the next 2 weeks, but that all of the other appointments, we intend to bring those to you on the 3rd of December.
There are no questions, thank you. Okay, colleagues, recommendations to council are that approving the Mayor's recommendations for appointments of council reps to Cedar Central Economic Development Agency Electoral College, Mayor councillors Dennison and Hapata, and B, Local Government New Zealand Zone 3, the Regional Zone 3, Mayor, the Deputy Mayor as a proxy, not available, and then councillors Bowen, Dennison, Naylor and Mickelard. I'm happy to move those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, there's no comments, we'll vote. Okay, that's passed 14 votes for with 1 abstention. Okay, moving through to number 10, and this is around the DLC, the District Licensing Committee, and the appointment process. That's on page 45 of your papers. I'll wait for the governance manager to run around the front again. And colleagues, this is around the appointments panel for the DLC committee list.
Kia ora anō. This committee was referenced this morning when we were looking at committee structure as a quasi-judicial committee. It is set up in under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act rather than under the Local Government Act, and so there are processes that are set out in that Act, particularly with regard to eligibility. And so this paper is really just setting out that process for you, making sure that we do those appointments in the most transparent manner possible, and thus setting up a panel to consider those that wish to sit on that committee from elected members. The aim would be that we would do this for elected members as soon as possible, i.e. in the next few weeks, and be able again to bring those appointment recommendations to you before Christmas, and that we would then be seeking members from the community in the new year to refresh that, because we have 2 community members whose dates of appointment expire in March.
Okay, thank you. That's a good summary. Any questions? There being none. Okay, we have recommendations to council. That council instruct the CE to commence a recruitment process for the council's list of approved district licensing committee members, and the council agree the mayor, the deputy mayor, legal counsel and independent Susan Beattie form the selection panel to finalise selection criteria, shortlist and interview candidates, and make recommendations back to council regarding final appointments to the DLC committee list. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dennison. Colleagues, it's quite important we get this process underway. It sits at arm's length from us, but it's important that we start the process and see if any of you would like to be part of it, as well as the wider community. Councillor Beattie. Former councillor Susan Beattie has been a DLC chair and has had quite a long career in history in this space, so it's quite appropriate that I think she's there. She understands the sector quite well. All right, if there are no comments, we will vote, please. It has passed 15 votes for and none against. All right, we've done morning tea, so we can get that away. Number 11 is the quarterly performance and financial report for the period ending 30 September 2025. John Aitken, who's PMO Office Manager, our Finance Manager Scott Manser, and Grace Knock, our Manager of Organisational Planning.
Glad everyone's refreshed after that coffee break. Kia ora koutou, Mr Mayor and elected members. Good to see many of the familiar faces around the table, and welcome to the 2 new faces as well. So, as the Mayor has introduced me, I'm Scott. I'm the Manager of Finance here at Council, and it's an absolute pleasure to bring the first quarter report for the 25-26 financial year to you with the team alongside me. This report's largely to be taken as read. No real major concerns or highlights, and in fact even I could go as far as saying a tad boring, which is a really, really good thing. 2 minor small things that we are keeping an eye on. One is the remuneration line, particularly in relation to the capitalised remuneration, just with that budget cap that's in place this year. And the second is our contractor spend. It's currently unfavourable with a bit of a faster start to the transport program, and with good reason, so it's just something that we're keeping an eye on as the year goes. John, capital report.
Tēnā koutou e rangatira o Papi Oia, ko John Aitken aho. John Aitken, the Manager of the Project Management Office. The focus for the last quarter has been on planning and procurement in the capital delivery space, alongside the delivery of a number of keynote projects. On pages 118 and 119, you'll see a completion summary of the SUS water treatment plant project and the stormwater improvements that have been completed on Fitzherbert Avenue. In addition, the flood protection work at McGregor Street, adjacent to Julia Wallace Retirement Village, was also completed in Q1. These assets represent a significant investment in our city's flood protection. At this stage in the financial year, also the capital renewals are ahead of the forecast spend for the year to date. Before you ask me any questions, I would like to pass to my colleague Grace to update on the non-financial performance measures. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Grace Knock, Manager, Organisational Planning and Performance. As Scott has alluded to, there's not a lot to say at this point. Most of the measures are on track. The few measures that are not on track, that's not to say they certainly won't be by the next quarter or the end of the year, so we'll just continue to monitor those and continue to provide updates through the quarterly reports.
Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, team. I'd just like to start on page 53 regarding the financial dashboard for profit and loss. There's some very interesting bullet points at the bottom there that talk about where we're favourable and unfavourable by comparison to budget. One of which says that we're $1.4 million favourable on our insurance premiums, noting that the underground infrastructure insurance still needs to be paid in November. How much is that going to change our favourable position by?
I'm just looking for a bit of guidance from Steve, but I think the underground insurance premium's about what we expect. So we're expecting a reasonable amount of that variance to hold.
Okay.
Yes, by year end, I think we'll be over $1 million and favourable.
Okay. Can I understand then, when we went to the community at this most recent annual budget and said we're going to put your rates up, and one of the key drivers of that is increasing insurance costs as a result of cyclones and earthquakes and whatnot, can I understand how we're in a position that we're potentially $1 to $1.4 million favourable against what we told our community we'd need?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The international insurance market softened quite a bit when we were negotiating the premiums, and that is the main driver. It was much softer than we expected, so we expected a fairly harsh and tense negotiating point, but as we actually entered those negotiations, and the asset data and the information that we provided a greater level of insurance to our broker and our reinsurers.
Okay, excellent. So in regards then to being offset by an operating expense and software licensing being almost $1 million over budget, 800,000 to be exact, how does that happen? That seems significant. You said it was boring, Scott. But
yeah, famous last words. The software, as you know, is going through a program of reform through our digital transformation program there. The team are continuing to work at turning some of those older legacy systems off. We had hoped that we had turned more off by this point, and there is some imminent close down of those systems, which will help in that space. There's also been a little bit of budget miscoding there. However, the total budget is accurate, but against actually software licensing probably wasn't as accurate as could have been.
what do you mean budget miscoding? As in we under-budgeted?
No, against the wrong line.
Right.
So we've corrected that for the upcoming annual budget.
So can you clarify for my understanding then, if we hadn't got, I don't want to say lucky because it's a result of hard work of our officers, but if we hadn't had a favourable result in insurance, you'd be coming to the table asking us for an $800,000 extension effectively to fund the gap in software licensing?
Yes.
I'll just get the CE to
Through the
come on.
chair, not necessarily. We would then look to find other ways of offsetting any deficit that might come across the budget.
As we always do.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A few questions, not financial, Scott, so you're off the hook. The first one is on page 80, and it's about the performance measures around swimming. And I note that the reduced participation at Splashhurst is said to be due to the temperature issues with the pool. So has that been dealt with? Is that now resolved? What are the temperature issues? What are we doing about it?
I'll refer to my colleague, Kathy DeVitton.
Kathy DeVitton, Manager Parks and Reserves. I can't give you the specifics on what the temperature issue was at the time. The number of swimmers at Splashhurst Community Pool, as you can see, is quite a low number anyway. So you've only got to have a week or so of temperature issues to cause quite a large percentage drop in figures. But my understanding is there are no current issues at the pool.
Okay, that's what I was trying to establish. So do we have any insight into why the resident satisfaction with public swimming is only 50%, and we're targeting 65%?
Again, Kathy Deaver-Todd, that's a really good question, and it's something that we're looking at in terms of the performance measures going forward with the new LTP, whether the level of the target is appropriate when we change the resident survey methodology, because certainly our pool check surveys that we do on site indicate that users have a high level of satisfaction with the pools.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next one is on page 70. And that is about the amount of land that we've got zoned that's infrastructure ready to meet the NPS on urban development requirements. So I'm just not quite understanding why it's red when the last line is that we've got an over 1,000 dwelling surplus compared to our 3-year demand. So can someone explain that to me?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. David Murphy, General Manager, Strategic Planning. Appreciate the way it's phrased could be better, but effectively that text talks about infill development, greenfield development, and then rural residential. So what it's saying is we have sufficient supply for infill, we have sufficient supply for rural residential, but we do not currently have sufficient supply for serviced greenfield development. So hence it's red. We've talked a lot in the chamber over the last couple of years about the challenges of getting more land rezoned and infrastructure ready. Just prior to the election, we talked about those infrastructure upgrades that are required at Kotiri as an example. So the challenge for us is the greenfield serviced areas.
Okay, so that last sentence only refers to the capacity in the rural residential zone, not the whole thing.
That's correct. We'll improve the way it's phrased next quarter, so it's, those 3 areas are distinctly separated. Appreciate it's a little bit hard to interpret, but yeah, that last sentence is about rural residential.
Okay, so we're underdone in the service greenfield areas. Is that why it's red?
Correct.
Yeah. So have we got, I guess, because a Cowtree plan is still going through the environmental court hearing, if and when that comes online, would that address that deficit or not?
It will assist with it. However, the MPSUD talks about infrastructure ready. So we know up at Kotiri, Plan Change G has rezoned land for an extra 1,000 sections. That has been appealed, so the Environment Court process is in place. However, even if once the Environment Court process is confirmed, we assume the land will be rezoned until such time as some of those infrastructure issues are resolved. That's not infrastructure ready. So our primary infrastructure ready area at the moment is Whakaronga. We're making really good gains at Kiki Whenua through good work of the team here and working with NZTA, so expect those barriers at Kiki Whenua to be released. But a Kotiri then becomes, there's also Matangi out at Flyger's Line there, which is was subject to the landowner coming forward as largely infrastructure ready, but it's the...
Okay, thank you. Well, that brings me nicely on to the next question, which is on page 61, which is about Kiki Whenua. So there's a comment there that Kiki Whenua water supply, internal depot capacity is stretched at the moment, no capacity to complete. So is that a lack of staff, or what is the internal depot capacity being stretched? What is the exact barrier there, and what effect is that having on Kiki Whenua as a rezoned area?
I'll just shout out to my colleague Mike, who's just whispered in my ear about specifically that line. So that's actually quite poorly worded. It's actually about realigning the program so we're doing all the work at once. So the depot capacity is not stretched. It's just about a phasing of work and making sure we're in one spot at the same time doing everything. So it's more of a timing issue rather than a capacity issue.
Okay, so it's not that we aren't providing enough resources for it to be done, it's just the timing of it. And is that relating to making Kiki Whenua infrastructure ready so that it meets the NPSUD?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Couple more, sorry. Okay, page 59. We've got some comment there around the multicultural community hub. Now, my recollection, and I haven't gone back to check this, so I might be wrong, but my recollection was we were expecting that to be finished about now, and we seem to be only on procurement, planning and awaiting consent. So is that correct, and what are the delays?
That is correct. We are out for tender at the moment. Tender documents are on the government electronic tender system for suppliers to return to us. There were some key delays around the design and user requirements, making sure that was fit for purpose and ready with enough specifications to seek tender submissions.
So when are we expecting that to be completed now?
So construction is set to start in the new year, January, February, and it'll be completed prior to the end of the financial year.
Okay, that seems to me to be quite a significant delay on what we were told. So again, from my recollection, it was due to be finished October, November now. So why is it being pushed out to the end of the financial year before it's going to be completed?
So the key here was to make sure that we had the design complete and ready enough. There was no point putting anything out to the market with an insufficient design or specification. And the team is working hard with the contractor to confirm their program once the tender submissions have returned.
So, sorry to kind of insist on this, but I'm sure that we were given a timeline that it would be completed by now. So what changed?
Through the building consent process, there were a number of RFIs, 41 from memory, which did delay or required further design time to confirm the specification before we went out to tender. So that process in itself was protracted to confirm the design specification.
Okay, I'll leave that one. And then also Pacifica Hub. So we've got a comment on it and about the tender and so on. But what is the timeline for that project to have that completed for Pacifica Community Hub? It's on the same page.
I'll just refer to my colleague.
Through you, Mr. Chair. There's a paper later on in confidential. If that is supported, the construction program is scheduled to start on the 1st of December, and the construction timeframe is 12 months through to completion at this stage.
Okay, and just so that we have the answer in public, although we did discuss this on the walk around, what plans are in place for alternative venues for the user groups while the construction's happening?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, I think ComDev are working closely with that group, and there are options being tabled with them to make sure that they've got a home base whilst we're constructing the new hub, if that's the decision that's supported by Council this afternoon.
Okay, so we're not going to leave them without a venue?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councillor Harpeter online.
Thank you. Just two questions from me on page 63, just a funding update. With Te Motu Poutoa and the MEF, you've gone for funding for both of them with the 3 million and the 4.2. What's the likelihood of getting either of those?
I will pass that one over to our GM Corporate Services CFO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Both applications have been submitted. In terms of Te Motu Poutoa, that will come down to the approval process through the RIF process, and we're still awaiting to hear on that. In terms of the MRF, that was submitted in September, and I think there's been some good engagement between our team and MFE on that one. Like any application you put forward, nothing is a guarantee, but we'll just have to keep you updated on both of those applications as we hear.
Do we know who else is in the pool for this money?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there is, I guess, in terms of the MRF upgrade through MFE, that is a national pool for specific purposes, similar to what we're trying to achieve. So it would just depend on who else is accessing that. But that pool's funded in part by the waste levy that the government has. So I guess it's the right fund first and foremost for trying to achieve funding. In terms of the RIF, that's as well, that is a national fund. There are a lot of applications, I suspect, for that. I think that's quite a substantial and significant fund nationally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bellin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Right, so I had a couple of questions just coming off Councillor Johnson's question about the Keke Whenua water supply, and that's a helpful clarification that it's a phasing and timing issue, not a capacity issue. Do we have an indication about the timing?
I might ask Mike to come down to answer this one.
Mike Monaghan, manager for Three Waters, through the chair. Yes, so we're just finalising the wastewater design at the moment, and the plan is to phase this over the summer months, so probably the second to start of the third quarter, maybe just after Christmas we'll be getting on site, but we just need to get those designs finalised, but it will be delivered this financial year.
Excellent, so nearish future. Cool, thank you. And just on that same page, further down the list, number 8 was about the bin processing storage facility, and it says the pricing came back more than allowed in budget, therefore on hold. Just again, what's the sort of forward plan or time frame? Is that just going back around to the budget cycle?
Yeah, that's right. So we're looking at where there's any cost pressures like this and any associated cost savings, and whether we can complete a program budget transfer within CE delegation, or whether we need to return the paper back here seeking an adjustment to budget to allow that project to occur. It wouldn't be prudent of us to go ahead with a project if we didn't have the required budget to cover it.
Great, thank you. On page 66 talks about the housing measure, and that's pretty bad stats. Is that an anomaly due to the industry capacity issues? That's housing measure 3.
That's the resource consent processing one. I might just invite Jeff to come and speak to that.
Right hand.
Here we go. Kia ora koutou, ko Jeff Baker, I'm the Planning Services Manager. Are you able just to repeat that question again, please?
Yeah, it talks about the housing measure 3, which is the resource consents for the first quarter, and those the on-time performance is 44% compared to a target of 80%. And you do talk later on that that's industry capacity has been making that bad, but is that an anomaly in the industry, or what's driving that low rate?
Yeah, I think based on my knowledge of the industry, talking with other counterparts and that sort of thing, yeah, it's an industry capacity thing. It's particularly acute here in Palmerston North and here at the council in terms of our own staff, but yeah, it's an issue with in the wider industry in general.
Are we expecting any alleviation of that in the future, or are we going to struggle to achieve these stats because of those factors outside our control?
I think it's always going to be a challenging space for a variety of reasons. I mean, we have been successively recruiting for staff for over a year now, and that's been problematic to hire them. Sort of looking at that as a track record, I think there's a fair chance that difficulty is going to carry on at least until the RMA is changed and there's some kind of relief in terms of the framework.
Yeah, and so the tool that's being developed is enable us to sort of speed along the things that are in our control.
Yeah, through the chair, I think in the circumstances, what we're trying to do is land on efficiency improvements in a variety of places. One of the key gains in efficiency would be just reducing the sheer administration effort that the team have to put into process consents. So we're having a workflow tool built that is going to save time and effectively allow staff to spend more time doing consents rather than administrating them.
Great, thank you. I just had a couple more. One is on page 85 for the Community Safety and Health Measure 1. And it just is a mention there of the stormwater flooding awareness campaign. And the notes are that we had good engagement with our community. Just wondered, could we hear a bit more about what constituted the good engagement? Not so much what we did, but how it was engaged with. Or you can come back to me if you like.
Is that something the communications manager can answer?
Glenn O'Connor, Acting Manager, Infrastructure. Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat which performance measure? Was it stormwater, did I hear you say?
It's the Community and Safety Health Measure, but it was relating to the stormwater flooding awareness campaign that we did. And we had good engagement with that. I just wondered what was the nature of that good engagement. How do we know people were hearing what we were putting out there?
Good afternoon, Olivia Wicks, Communications Manager, Acting GM today. I can send through some significant data. I guess some of the highlights that we saw, we had more than 5,000 people fill in a survey about their preparedness over that time frame. We had a significant number of hits to both our website, people being involved in our social media. We had a large number of people come out to a public talk we did about earthquakes, so quite a few things, but I can send something through in this week's elected member update highlighting some of those key things for you.
Thank you, that'd be very interesting. And my final question is from page 87, the Climate Change and Sustainability Measure 2. I just wondered, are we up to date with our business continuity plans and emergency training for staff now? Or how are we tracking?
We'll pass that one over to, I think, Kerry Lee.
Kia ora, Kerry Lee, General Manager, Development and Regulatory. Councillor, can I just ask you to repeat that question, please?
Yes, how are we tracking with our business continuity plans and emergency training for staff, which has been one of the climate change and sustainability?
Sure, we are up to date. All our business continuity plans have been reviewed and are up to date. We're now starting on a process of rolling reviews over a 12-month period. When we review, we are reviewing them proportionately. So by that I mean if we're talking, for instance, about roles that are more functions that are more desk-bound, we might do that as a desktop exercise, sort of as a discussion. But with more complex things like the contact centre, digital, Three Waters, that requires more of an exercise. So yes, we are up to date.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Naylor, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My questions relate to the dashboard on page 53. Just firstly, the other revenues, which it talks about, that's mostly to do with, predominantly due to higher parking infringements collected. I'm just interested to know, further down it says that we've had 0.8 million in. What's the reason for it being so far ahead of what we've budgeted for revenue? And have we forecast for the year appropriately, do you think, in that regard?
Yeah, so obviously like any budget, there's a level of assumption around usable time and people actually paying. One thing is we have noticed is that people aren't necessarily paying when they're using it, but they're getting an infringement instead, which is actually bringing more revenue to us. Seems a little bit counterintuitive, but we are consistently looking at the assumptions around that. And as we've internally worked on the upcoming budget, we've done a significant amount of work in the parking space based off these numbers. So we're continually putting that under review.
Okay, so just more specifically, the increase in the charges that were brought in, I can't remember when, so is that part of what's driving the increase, and have we factored that into our forecasting?
Now this is testing my knowledge of the forecast after being away on holiday for a month. I don't actually think that it is making a difference, the increased fee, because people aren't paying as much as they're using the spaces and things like that. So our parking enforcement team's actually doing a really good job of catching those people as well, and that's bringing the revenue in.
Okay, thank you. And just the second area of that I was going to ask about is what you mentioned earlier, the remuneration expenses being lower, unfavourable due to lower capitalisation of remuneration. Now, I'm just interested to know what our assumptions are in terms of the level of capital delivery when we plan how much of the salaries are capitalised.
Yeah, so the capital program has some major components. Not all programs attract staff as well. So the renewals program is where a lot of our staff time is capitalised, but then John's team as project managers who deliver more in the capital new space also attract a series of time. I guess what that is signalling is that we have some pressures. I know John's had some vacancies in his team, and that all adds to that pressure on that capitalised remuneration. Further to that, we add the weather at the start of the financial year. That also impacts the capitalisation rate because it prevents the depot teams from getting out and doing the work as well. So there's no simple answer to that one there, but we do plan on achieving the capital programs that have staff attached to them. Otherwise, we have a pressure on the P&L to sort of more specifically answer that question.
So, sorry, if I can just get you to try and explain how would vacancies in the team cause an unfavourable variation to this budget? Wouldn't that mean
No, so the capitalised remuneration reduces the overall remuneration budget, but because there's not the number of hours being worked on the capital program, it causes an unfavourable variance.
Okay. So if we're looking at last year, I guess the reason I'm asking these questions because I know that was one of the big drivers for the overspend in remuneration last year, and we had the delivery was obviously, a little bit lower. If we were to, how much of a risk do we have, and how is that risk being managed? If we are to say deliver 75 or 80% of our capital program this year, will that put us a couple of million over in terms of the capitalised remuneration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If I think about the advice that the CFO provided during the budget, and you might want to comment to this, we did highlight that could be an ongoing risk, and particularly with the level of the budget there. But we do plan, where we have staff employed for working on capital programs, we do plan to deliver 100% of those because we've got the staff in there. They're a lot easier to control, other things aside, but they're a lot easier to have some control and influence over. Cam, did you want to add anything to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess to come back to your question, it's not a linear equation when it comes to level of overall capital completion versus capitalised remuneration, because different capital programs have different inputs. Some are delivered by contractors, some are delivered by our internal staff. So that's not one. That's just, we're not able just to look at that and go, this is how we're going to land. Things that probably do factor, as has been mentioned, weather has an effect. Whether there is additional maintenance in spaces that require more attention of staff that divert them away from delivering on a capital program, perhaps Those are the sorts of things that we do monitor, because they are basically on a time sheeting basis, so they put their time to the actual work that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. And just the final question around that as well, just with the cap that's on that budget for this financial year, what's the threshold whereby that would need to come to council for approval?
So the Chief Executive sort of alluded to that a little bit earlier. We try and manage the budget obviously as a whole. However, given that cap is in place, there actually is no delegation to overspend that. So this regular reporting and following the Q2 report, when we start giving you forecast information as well, you'll be able to see that and have a conversation. And I know when I brought the paper at the start of last month around the remuneration increase for local water, that was all sort of feeding into that. So we're trying to make sure that we're keeping you as up to date about remuneration as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes, just a question for you on page 76 regarding the state of the city's footpaths, and are we expecting to see some improvement there over the next quarter with the warmer weather and what have you for resurfacing?
Well, I might pass that one over to Glenn, our Acting GM of Infrastructure.
Glenn O'Connor, Acting Infrastructure General Manager. So if I understand the question, it was around the state of the reporting of the footpath. Is that correct, Councillor? Currently, we're just undertaking our latest round of footpath monitoring inspections. That will give us data probably in the next month or 6 weeks that will give us an accurate reflection, or a more up-to-date reflection of the standard of our footpaths across the city. So once we've got that data into our system, once we understand, we'll bring the reporting back up to date. That will tell the story, and we'll have a bit more information then, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, colleagues. Lots of questions there. My question is about Appendix 9 and 10, which is elected member training, elected member expenditure. You might be aware, you might not. There was quite a bit of focus of attention around this from the last quarterly report, which was within the election period, and a little bit of misunderstanding maybe of the reporting, that it just looks at a quarterly slice. So I wondered if now would be a good time to ask if it's possible to have, like we have in Appendix 10, the comparative totals for previous years, some kind of cumulative element to that reporting, or comparative reporting across different financial years for those two budget areas, so that the community have clarity that that isn't the total amount of activity or spending, it's just the quarter.
Is that just for Appendix 9?
Yes, Appendix 10 already has the comparative totals. I might be interested in further breakdown, but at least that shows it in the context, whereas Appendix 9 doesn't show the budget, doesn't show any accumulation, doesn't show any comparison.
Yeah, yep, we can have a look and bring something back in the next quarter report for that.
That'd be really helpful, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thanks, people. That's the questions done. So we've got a recommendation to committee that we receive the report titled Quarterly Performance and Financial Report, period ended 30th September 2025, and related attachments presented today, 12th November 2025. I'm happy to move, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Just acknowledge the officers presenting, but of course it's an all of council work period, or work output really, and we're heading in the right direction despite all of the economic headwinds, etc. So happy to move this. There being no other comments, we will vote. Has passed, 16 votes for, none against. All right, I'll go to Stacey Andrews, our city economist, next, because I know she has to catch a plane. So at number 14, please, colleagues, we're jumping around a bit again, apologies. 211 of our papers. This is around the city's quarterly economic update. Over to you, Stacey.
Kia ora tātou, Stacey Andrews, City Economist. I have prepared a hopefully brief presentation. I realise I've got 10 minutes, so I'll crack straight into it. There is quite a bit of detail in the report, so happy to answer questions after.
Just make sure you switched it on the side. Trap for young players.
Oh. The back had come on. Okay, that will work. Okay, so there's been a lot happening, of course, across the New Zealand economy and globally, and that the domestic economy does remain subdued for those reasons. There is some signs of improvement across some of our indicators, but it is a slow road to recovery, as we all know. We're at the rough end of the recession. We've got higher unemployment, and business failures are also peaking at the moment. Persistent spare capacity across the national economy are quite pointed at the moment, and that will mean that the RBNZ is likely to reduce interest rates further to try and take up that spare capacity. So at the moment, our ability to supply exceeds demand across the economy. So what needs to happen now is that that demand is stimulated, and that's what the RBNZ is doing currently. Those lower interest rates and our strong export sector will boost confidence. I think confidence is actually one of the biggest issues that we have across the New Zealand economy right now. There is very little confidence, both from households and businesses, and that's going to take a while to come back. We do have the challenges of a changing world order. As a small trading nation, we rely on strong international institutions like the World Trade Organization. That is no longer particularly influential in the global world order. I can say that our export values are doing very well at the moment, so there is still very much strong demand and a high pricing for our products internationally, which is further supporting our economy, but we are at the mercy of those changing economic conditions globally. One thing our government is doing really well, I believe, is the efforts they're putting into broadening those international relationships. So there's a lot of work going on in that space, and I think we do definitely need to do that, both for security reasons and for economic opportunities. Our challenges, of course, include that weak household confidence. So private activity drives 60% of GDP in most developed nations like ours, and that's why we've seen this recession, because business confidence has been highly suppressed and spending has stopped across the economy, which has driven our economy into recession. House price stagnation as well. When we have house price stagnation, we have something which is called a negative wealth effect. When our house prices are rising really strongly, we feel a lot wealthier, and we're quite happy to go out there and spend on discretionary items such as renovating our houses, going for a trip overseas, buying new cars, etc. So we're seeing the opposite of that, which is compounding those factors. One thing that's concerned me for the last 18 months around about is that loss of productive capacity. We're losing people to overseas. We're losing talented people from this country. That does concern me, and it will take a while to get those people back. Of course, there have been affordability concerns over the last several years. We are seeing those inflationary pressures come right off, but we're still seeing increases of between 25% in the CPI over the last 5 years, and for construction that's around 33% over those 5 years. So those cost pressures are still, those cumulative increases still persist, and we're still dealing with those high costs. Okay, so that's our rolling annual inflation over the 5-year trend. So as you can see, our inflation levels across some areas have been exceedingly high. CPI is up 25.1% over those 5 years, driven over the last year by electricity and other factors, including rates to some extent, but the pressure from rates is actually coming down quite markedly from the previous year. We have a labour cost index which has increased 17.3% over 5 years, construction up over 32%, farm import costs up 26.2% over those 5 years. But all these pressures now are starting to be relieved across the economy, so that will support affordability as well as lower interest rates. So this actual and projected OCR is from the August monetary policy statements. As you can see, this shows those interest rates coming off firmly, and we expect another 25 basis point fall on the 26th of November this month. Due to some data that's come out this week around inflation expectations, which showed that they're firmly anchored, we may even see a 50 basis point reduction in the OCR. That will support confidence, boost demand across the economy, and eventually flow through to employment levels across our communities. So how this has played out for our city, as you can see, between 2018 to about 2023-ish, our economy was performing much better than the national average. Of course, this is reversed now once the borders opened and coming off a very low base. The wider national economy did very well because there was that increase in demand from international tourism, etc., which really drove that up above our economic activity. But over that, as we can see over that period, our structure here in the city does really support economic activity here. We don't get the highs and the lows that other parts of the country have because of those large stable sectors that we have, including healthcare, social assistance and defence and other government agencies. So the data does reflect the challenges and the bright spots. I think the ones that stand out for me really strongly for this latest data set is the increase in jobs in the city. We've still seen a reduction in jobs of people that are employed in the city, because our people are employed outside the city as well. But we're seeing jobs growth or job creation within our own city, which is very positive relative to a 1.7% drop nationally. We are also seeing that non-residential construction activity lift very strongly, and I've got a slide on that shortly. The other indicators continue to reflect the challenges. We don't have Infometrics data for unemployment for the September quarter yet, but we know that the unemployment rate nationally has increased to 5.3% in the September quarter and expected to stay around about there until mid-next year, dropping to 5.1%. So these are our non-residential construction investment. As we can see, it's very much driven by private sector activity. So factories, industrial and storage up 94.2%, a really strong increase there, and commercial up 129.5% over the year. But what we are seeing is a big downturn in public sector investment across the city, and this is pretty clear across New Zealand as well. So we're seeing the rollback of investment from central government level. So conditions continue to weigh on spending, but we are seeing some gradual signs of improvement. So the rate of decline is less. We are seeing a little bit of strength in the national data as well around discretionary spending, and we're also seeing it here, especially in the city centre. There's been a slight boost to spending over that year of 2.4% on non-essential items, and that's versus a plus 0.3% increase nationally. So we are seeing some emerging positivity across the regional economy. So house price stability continues, and we all know that house prices were rising 25% a year there in 2023. It was not sustainable. So the benefit of this is that we have much greater affordability than what we had previously, but there is that other side of the equation that people have lost equity and feel less wealthy and less confident to go out and spend. We also have job insecurity that is impacting on that. So if you are not confident in your income over time, then you're more likely to shut your wallet, which is a very sensible thing to do, of course. These are the projections. I think I talk to a lot of groups, and I see that when conditions are at play, as human beings, I think I do it myself, we tend to think that this is going to last forever. Actually, we're going through a cycle at the moment. It is the rough end of the cycle because this is people's lives that are being affected. So there's hardship there, but things are set to improve. And these latest RBNZ GDP growth projections do reflect that improvement over the next year and beyond. So longer term analysis does highlight the industry's strengths here that will support our recovery. We know the Defence Force is consolidating, and we will experience a great deal of investment and increase in personnel from that large investment. As I've already talked about around our large stable sectors, they really do support resilience and stability here within the city economy. Again, those industry sectors most exposed to weak economic conditions have really done it tough. And as we can see in the liquidation data, it's construction and the tourism sector that's been hit really, really hard by those conditions. Affordability will be supported by lower borrowing costs. I did a bit of a play looking at what the costs are, what the repayments are on $800,000 down to $200,000 mortgage based on 7% and 4.5%, and it's over $1,000 at and that's a month. It's about $1,200 for $800,000, and even at $200,000, it's still almost $300 a month. That's a lot of money that's being put back into families' budgets, which will really relieve that pressure. The outlook for the rural economy remains very positive, Again, that elevated commercial industrial investment is really supporting. I've already talked about Defence Force. As recovery progresses, the confidence to invest and employ will be boosted. But again, it is going to take some time. Yes, and the availability of skills and talent. Within my report, as you'll see, I did talk about the age groups of people that are leaving the country, more experienced, skilled New Zealanders. So that may be a concern from us as we look to recover. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stacey. Councillor.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacey. My question relates to the annual earnings and median earnings. It's at the top of page 226 of our agenda. The annual earnings in Palmerston North City going up 0.8%, but the median earnings going up 6.8%. It's a big gap there and much bigger than the gap for the New Zealand data. Am I correct to understand that that means that the people that are having the wage increases are those at the top end? Is that a correct assumption to make from that?
Sorry, are you referring to 2.6?
2.6.
Earnings growth has slowed as labour market conditions.
No, I'm looking at, sorry, I'm not sure what page it is on your, sorry, it's page 226 of our agenda, and it's in the Palmerston North Economic Growth 2025, the second page of that, and the annual earnings have gone in Palmerston North City have gone up 0.8% as opposed to, but the median earnings have gone up 6.8%.
Yeah, this is one that always causes confusion, and rightly so, because the data that we have for median earnings is actually till June 2024. So that was in that period where wage growth was very, very strong. But that's the latest data that we can get that includes all income. So it's from a different period of time. That's why it's so markedly different.
So at the bottom of page 225, where it says annual change unless stated otherwise.
Yeah, and then underneath it's got year ended June 2024, Stats New Zealand, under the median earnings for salaries and wages.
I didn't see that, but
yeah, it's a good measure, but when we have the kind of volatility that we have at the moment, it's actually can be very, very different over a short space of time.
So do we have the June 2025 median earnings to have a
no, there's a 14-month lag on that data, and that's why that's the latest data that's actually available to us, the June 2024.
Okay, it's obviously a bit quite complex. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Stacey. Just had a question for you. In the housing section of the report, it's paragraph 3.5, which then has a number of additional bits on it. Section H of that, which is over on the next page, says the Ministry of Social Development has suppressed the September data on households in emergency housing. Can I just ask what you mean by MSD suppressing data and why it was done?
Yeah, absolutely. When the data gets, when that's very small numbers, for confidentiality reasons, they do suppress the data. So if it's under about 15, they suppress it for those reasons.
And there's no way to even look at a broader time frame to get a bigger sample size to get some insight into what's happening?
The way we can get insight is to look at the grants that have been paid out for emergency housing. So that shows a significant decline. And I'll just look
that was in that paragraph as well.
Yeah, so that does imply that it has dropped sharply over the year.
Right. Thanks. Yeah. That's clear now. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kuru.
Hi, I've got a question around the same question, which was that number H, and then also F. Just saying here it's fallen 11.5% for the public housing register, and the criteria for being placed on the housing register has been tightened, likely expanding a proportion of the reduction in households on the public housing register. Mm-hmm. So all of that data is confidential, and do we know where these people are?
No, we don't know who these people are.
So we don't know where they've gone, so they wouldn't have just disappeared?
No, we don't know. One of the things that has happened is a couple of years ago, people could be registered on more than one register for a part of the country, so that was one thing that was driving that up slightly, but there's still a huge amount of need, of course. And now that the criteria have been tightened, that's reduced, but actually from June, it's starting to rise again quarter on quarter, so it's probably balanced out with removing people who were on there twice, and now we hopefully will start to see the true trend going forward in terms of need or increase in need in that, by that register.
Fantastic. And the other question I've got is around, where is it, item 3.2B. So there was a total of 164.2 million worth of non-residential consents issued in Palmerston North over the year to August 2025. This is an annual increase of 82.3%, which is massive, compared with a 5.4% decrease in the value of non-residential consents nationally. I was just wondering who these people are. So are they commercial investors? Are they, yeah, because they're not residential? Okay.
Yeah, so I do have quite a bit of detail on, there's a lot of layers of data that you can get, and there's a lot of investment in storage facilities, in particular in the factories industrial storage space, but also commercial investment in the airport and the new Wyndham Trip Hotel in the city centre, alongside other commercial businesses such as office blocks, etc. So there is a lot of investment, which is positive for the city, definitely.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stacey. Appreciate you hanging in there, and safe travels to Auckland. Right, we have the recommendations there to Council around receiving the Palmerston North City Quarterly Economic Update for October 2025, including Palmerston North Economic Growth Indicators October 2025 Attachment 1, and B, Palmerston North Quarterly Economic Card Spending Report September 2025 Attachment 2. I'm happy to move those, second by the Deputy Mayor. Thanks to Stacey and others for pulling these reports are really quite critical for us, in my opinion. It does give us a snapshot to what is happening, and I really like the growth indicator, the snapshot page on pages 225 and 226. That gives us a real quick heads up on what is happening in terms of the bigger picture, but also earning, spending, housing, business and jobs. I think it does show that the economy is quite diverse here, and although it can be an Achilles heel at times, it does shelter us from the highs and the lows. Palmerston North has always been, we just don't suffer from those highs and lows, so it just means that businesses sometimes can get ahead when times are tougher. In saying that though, it has been really tough. Last night we were at the Chamber AGM, and they're seeing some green shoots, but they've had a real tough year on top of a previous tough 2024. So there are some really good things in the wind. I mean, we heard about some of the new construction, you know, in terms of education and international students. I'm starting to feel a little bit of that myself. The Deputy Mayor and I are doing more in that space in terms of welcoming people, and in some cases farewelling people, but there's a new lot coming the next day sort of thing. There's a new Vice-Chancellor coming at Massey, which I have high hopes for. UCOL is about to get uncoupled from Te Pūkenga, and we're starting to see the schools doing more in this space. We do have to get some more targeted government investment though, especially in transport. And as you all know, we've just almost seen zero being spent around the state highway network here, and there's nothing planned. So that is something that we're all going to have to advocate for, along with business, along with other partners, because it will start to bite us even more than it is now in the coming years. So we're not seeing anything really for the next 5 to 7 years. So that will need to be rectified, and with an election coming up, the advocacy to both politicians and senior officials will need to happen. So thank you, Stacey. Appreciate that, as always. If there's no other comments, we will vote, please. As passed, 16 votes for, none against. All right, I can see Luke in the back there. We might just jump to number 15 next, and that's around our annual summary report of economic benefits of council-supported events. That's on page 237, And invite Luke McIndoe, our events manager, up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, my name is Luke McIndoe. I'm Manager Venues and Events Partnerships. I'll take this report mainly as read. Just thought I'd clarify a couple of points. So, officers request a range of metrics from event producers to inform the data in this report, the economic benefit analysis. Things we ask for are budgets, how the budget is spent, attendance and ticketing information, including demographics, any other funding they receive, and sponsorship income. Some of this data can, of course, be commercially sensitive, so that's just a bit of a context for you around this, around the data that we request. So a certain level of trust is required by events producers in sharing this information with us. So I'd just like to thank all the events that we do work with for being so open and honest and providing this data that we collect. But yeah, that's me. I'm open for questions.
Right, thank you, Luke. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page 238 and 239, apologies if it's just me that's not quite following the distinction between gross and net benefit. Normally I would assume gross benefit is that minus the cost is the net, but you're really saying it's a specific benefit to the city. Can you just give us a bit more information about the difference between what's included in gross benefit versus net benefit?
Yeah, correct. So we get our methodology from Fresh Info. So they help us put this together. And how they differentiate is they quantify gross as total spend from the event, but then they clarify that net is the regional benefit that the local economy receives.
Okay, so I'm not quite following that, because that would imply that $35 million of the benefit of the events we fund goes out of our region, which surely something like Salou, which only takes place in Palmerston North, wouldn't be the case. So can I get a better understanding of that?
I would need to go back to Fresh Info to really drill down into that information. But yeah, different events, the benefits are realised differently, I guess is the easiest way of saying that. Some of these do use external things like external AV providers. The travel costs will be, realised outside of region. Some of the producers are not based in our area as well, so their profits from the event aren't actualised here as well.
Okay. Well, I think I'm possibly not the only one not quite following, so if we could get the methodology or a better explanation sent through from them, that would be greatly appreciated.
I can bring that back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Yeah, my questions relate to the assessment methodology as well, and just interested to know where we would find that. So are you saying that that will be provided to us? Or?
Yeah, I'll bring it back. Yeah.
And because the other question is, the quality of the data, the report indicates that the quality of the data continues to be a concern. So what is the main concern in terms of the quality of the data?
Through the chair, I kind of alluded to it in my commentary. We have had a bit of a few issues with the depth of information provided. So we will tell producers that we actually do need to know what your budgets are and how it's spent, not just what's your income, what's your expenditure. So when we have that full rundown of how things are actually spent, we don't have to make assumptions. So that's where we get better quality of data, and also things like when a producer will say this is how many, this is the attendance, going one step further and saying, okay, this is our attendance, but this is our demographic breakdown, and this is where they've come from by providing the ticketing data as well. So it's around the depth of the data, I guess, more than just the top line numbers.
So I guess what I'm also interested in is what the assumptions are.
So, I mean, for example, New Zealand Young Performers Awards gross benefit 1.2 million. Is the assumption that everyone that comes to the city, that there's an amount that they're paying for accommodation, and then how is that determined? Like, I'm sort of interested to know, because there are some pretty big numbers that are bandied around when people claim economic benefit to the city for certain events. It would be good to know what the assumptions are, not just the methodology, but actually what assumptions drive that are input into that.
Absolutely, I'll get that provided with the methodology as well, because that's built into the Fresh Info model, the assumptions.
Thank you.
Councillor Harpiter, online.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Luke. The other benefits that aren't listed here are for the events that are at the arena that are economic benefits to the city that we gain as a city in terms of our other major events, like things like the tournaments that we have for basketball and for volleyball, and they're not listed because they're not funded in a major event fund. Where would we get that kind of information? Because we get economic benefit for those events as well. So where do we get that information from in that kind of reporting format?
Through the chair. So Sport Manawatu, who administer our Sports Event Partnership Fund, they are now using this model as well. So as they are providing their 6-month annual reports, they will be able to provide this context. Some of that data does come through on your annual funding report as well, but I can take this away as a note to include that in future reports. This is the second of these reports that I've provided. So it's, yeah, I can get that included from next time as well. But
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just elaborate a little bit further. But in terms of other events outside of the funded events that council support through grant funding, that's a slightly separate conversation, and we're in the process now of taking this model as well and retooling it slightly to look at, rather than singular event based, by looking at to look at impact over a venue. So that's a work in progress, but it's quite a major piece that the venues and events team, as well as Stacey's team and the Convention Bureau, are currently looking at with Fresh Info at the moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Luke, for the report. Similarly, I think to other people, I would really appreciate some clarity around gross and net. I'd also be interested to know, and so tell me if this is possible, this is our major events fund, but are we the major funder of those events? So how much skin in the game do we have compared to other people? Because I think that might change some of our decision making about that. Is that possible to understand?
Yeah, it does come into the assessment of the funding in the first place, but yeah, it hasn't been clarified in this report. So that again is something that we could look at providing the context for. But when we are assessing the events as they come in into the major event fund, that is definitely a consideration around sustainability of funding and levels of support that is being requested from council.
And just to go back, I think follows on from Councillor Harpiter's point, the title of the requested report is about council-supported events. I don't see that as necessarily being limited to the major events fund. I think there's the Sports Events Fund, Partnership Fund, there's the Arts Events Fund, which all have economic impact as part of their funding criteria. And I think it will be useful, recognising that we do receive reporting on those elements through the various committees, but it would be useful to see those things pulled into one place if that's possible. Yeah, noted.
We are working on making sure we can gather that richness of data to be able to produce those reports. But yeah, noted.
Especially as we're looking into might be a comment a little bit, but the review of our funding strategy be helpful to understand the different levers we have to pull. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Luke. Appreciate that. I think it's quite key that we understand that cost benefits analysis information and how that's actually made up is quite critical. But having been involved on the other side, I do know that it's there is a method to the assumptions and a science to it. So it'll be good for our colleagues to understand that as well. So recommendation there is Council receive the memo titled Annual Summary of Economic Impact and Benefits of Council-supported events presented on the 12th of November 2025. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Again, thanks to the events team and actually all the event managers that produce these events, things like the Central District's Field Days, to the recent National Young Performers, to Davis Cup Tennis, to the Rural Games, to the rally guys at Daybreaker Rally. They all add to the richness of the city. Interesting, just at one of the hospitality events just recently, they absolutely notice when we haven't got an event on. So I know that's not science, but it does mean that we must be having an effect in a positive manner. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I think it goes without saying, just based on the questions that have been asked, that it would be helpful to have a little bit more substance to this. And I realise it is, you know, initial stages of this report, but to have confidence in data like this, we really, for it to be meaningful, we need to have an understanding of what makes this data up. At the moment, I don't have a lot of confidence in the data because I don't understand how we got to that data. So I think with economic benefit, often, you know, there's big numbers used to justify perhaps council investment into certain things. So where actually, when we get a report like this, there can be big numbers, but the substance behind it, I feel, is not giving me personally confidence of that being useful in any way, particularly as, yeah, we don't know the assessment methodology. The report itself raises concerns around the quality of the data. So I feel that it either needs to be meaningful and of value, or we perhaps shouldn't do it at all. Yeah, so I'll leave it there.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Luke, again for the report. I just wanted to say, I think this is a valuable report. I think we can do more work on it. But colleagues, I would just caution maybe slightly. This is a report on the economic impact of these events. And I think what the Mayor has alluded to, and what I would certainly like to reinforce at this opportunity, is that the benefits of these events go beyond the economic impact as well. They bring us benefits in terms of our city centre vibrancy, and we know when our city centre is vibrant, people perceive it as safer. They bring us benefits in terms of the public perception of our city as a great place to come and to visit, to do business. Yeah, that is benefit to us. We've heard really clearly through the Sports Events Partnership Fund that it brings us benefits in terms of our ability for our local kaimahi kids, rangatahi, to participate in these events that they wouldn't be able to do if they weren't here. So yes, the economic benefits are important, and it's really important that we understand where that data is being drawn from and to be able to have trust and confidence in that. Important that we look at the range of events that should fall within that. But the economic impact will only ever be one element of the impact of having a strong events focus for the city. And I'd like to just reinforce that that's the frame I'll bring to decision making around that.
Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Your Worship. I want to endorse what Councillor Bowen has said. I really feel quite strongly about this. And I get it that Luke is qualified in 2.7. I think the reason why it's not as simple as we'd like it to be, or he'd like it to be as well. The quality of data continues to be of concern for officers, and the quality and validity of reporting is contingent on the accurate and appropriate metrics provided by event producers and the assessment and post-event reporting phases. Yeah, I mean, we're in a state of constant improvement, but I must say I want to compliment the events team, because every event I have been to in my time here has been stunning. And there's not one event I've come away from and thought, ooh, that was yucky. In fact, I thought, that's contributing to our global reputation, to what we can offer our citizens, young and old. And so the only thing I wanted to say, because I know you're going to pursue it further, Luke, is please thank you to you and your team, because you do a wonderful job. Thank you. Kia ora.
Councillor Harper online.
I just want to say very quickly, the accommodation sector really value what the city does in terms of its events, and if we didn't have what the events does, the accommodation sector would fall over. So well done to the city for all it does for its events, and the accommodation sector wouldn't do as well as it does without it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so look, just in summing up, I think it's really around that information from Fresh Info. Obviously, those will remember Shane Vilovich. He did a lot of work around those economics for us in other areas as well. So he's well known, and he does a lot of this work right around New Zealand. So I have some confidence that there'll be some science to it, but it'll be good to show that in a bit more transparency to the rest of our colleagues, so we can perhaps get a little bit more confidence around that. So if we could vote, please. That's passed 16 votes for, none against. Okay, we'll jump back now to number 12, Treasury Report. I'll ask Steve Patterson as our quarterly report ending 30 September 2025's Manager of Financial Strategy. Steve.
Yes, good afternoon, councillors, and welcome back. In particular, welcome to the two new members around the table. Good to see you here. I thought I'd just take one moment to perhaps set the scene a little bit for this report. The council, through its financial strategy, sets the framework within which it's going to, it needs to borrow, and the way in which and how much would be borrowed. The long-term plan is the place where the budgets for the 10 years are sorted, and the discussions about what's appropriate in terms of debt levels are worked out. Those are reviewed as part of the budgets in the following 2 years. We have a treasury policy that's adopted by the council that sets some frameworks about levels of risk and the like that the council is prepared to take in terms of the extent to which debt is fixed or floating, for example, or the term of the debt, those sorts of things. So part of my role is about managing the council's debt portfolio, and within that, obviously, the things that are important become making sure that we're raising debt at the most cost-effective way to the council, but within the risk parameters that are set in the policy that council's adopted. Obviously, when it comes to raising debt, the amount that is raised is something that I review and determine on a daily basis, basically, and interact with some external advisors each month about when we should go to market to borrow. The decisions about how much to borrow, for how long, whether they're fixed or floating, are all things that we talk about and consider and make decisions about as part of that. So, as you'll be aware from the financial strategy, the council has a policy that will fund new investments from debt. That means that those who benefit over the life of the asset are the ones who are paying for it. We don't, though, take out 30-year loans or 50-year loans or anything for every asset, because that's not what's offered in the market. we'll borrow, say, for 5 years or 6 years or 3 years, something like that, and then refinance those as they mature throughout the period. At the moment, the council's in a period of quite sustained growth over a number of years where its overall debt has been rising. So that means you don't sort of physically see there being debt repayment per se, but the community over time is paying for debt repayment by the budgetary provision that's made each year for debt repayment. And we work out the amount that's going to be repaid or provision for repayment by for each of the programs, the capital programs that are going to be funded, spreading that cost over its life and saying we make provision, say 30 years, if that's the max, and it's an asset with that sort of life cycle, have a debt provision amount for that. So the budgets include a sum. What actually gets paid off in any year may or may not be that sum in theory, because it will depend on a whole lot of other cash flow things that happen throughout the year, including decisions sometimes of the council itself through the year to fund additional things or provide. But of course, the council's already made its decisions about what the rates level is going to be. So the cash decisions are something that I'm looking to manage then. So in this quarter, there's nothing particular of interest to draw to your attention. We've lived within the parameters of the policies and have the appropriate funds on hand to deliver the payments to pay the bills when they're required. And looking forward, we'll be capable of doing that too in the next period. So that's me.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Steve. Just in light of the water CCO assets and the debt that relates to our water assets being transferred, is there some projections being done at the moment in terms of how we manage our debt to ensure that the alignment enables that without any compromise or penalties?
Absolutely, yes. We've been keeping an eye on that over recent years as the water activity proposals have changed, and as they've solidified now, we're continually looking at what proportion of the debt we're going to assign to the waters and what sort of a strategy would be adopted. So I think the way it's all falling into place, I'm confident that we will have an appropriate level of transfer available at the time.
Okay, and do you know that amount at the moment of the debt that relates to our waters that will be transferred?
No, we don't exactly, because that won't happen until the 30th of June 27, and we're continuing to borrow for water-related things now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you know what the current debt is that relates?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And in terms of the financial strategy and the Treasury policy, when...
They'll be reviewed again as part of the next 10-year plan.
So the next 10-year plan being, next.
Well, we're starting to work on it now, but
Yeah.
it'll come for you to talk
So
about.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is that this report is obviously a snapshot in time up to today.
Yes, up to the 30th of September.
It's end of September. So at what point will we be reviewing our financial strategy for what's left after the water's debt has gone, in terms of, will that be a proportionate, is that just through the long-term plan that we do that, nothing before that?
Well, we'll be starting to work on it. We've been doing some preliminary thinking about that, but in terms of formal interaction with you as the council, that'll happen as part of the development of the long-term plan. But we'll have an eye on it, obviously, as we're bringing stuff together and managing the process over the next 12 months.
Over the next 12 months, did you say?
Well, over this next period until the 30th of June 27, but throughout this period, we're continually looking at the things that might need to be thought about and changed as part of the strategy, yes.
Okay. And if there are any assumptions to be made, will that come to us?
Any significant change, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this might be a question for the Chief Executive, but is there a reason why we receive this report quarterly, or could it not be a 6-monthly or annual report?
Through the Chair, it generally lines up with our quarterly report, has done so for quite some time. I think it's actually probably good practice to be looking at it on a quarterly basis.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Naylor raised a point around what debts associated with Three Waters. Is that possible to get a figure for our next report, just of where we sit and where we would be tracking?
Certainly we've got numbers that we've been using as part of the material that's gone to develop the water entities, so yes, we can mention that.
Yeah, I wonder if we might...
Well, there isn't specific debt that relates to water. What we'd just be saying is that of the debt that's outstanding, that we can make an association with the water. We'll have a sum that we think is appropriate for what's funded water activities and hasn't been repaid, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be great. Thanks.
Perhaps through the Chair, as well as that, there is debt associated with the water activities that we'll be identifying. We might very well bring that back as part of the sort of transition reports that would come back with the water service entity. I think it's probably better to probably align it with that rather than separately in this report. Just might give you a bit more context as well about what's going on.
All right. Thank you, Steve. We've got a recommendation there that Council note the performance of Council's treasury activity for the quarter ended 30 September 2025. I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'll just open up for any comments. Councillor Dennison.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the very point that I was just asking questions on, following on from Councillor Naylor and from the CE's response, I think that is important for us to start having an idea of that figure and monitoring the additional investment that we make in that space, just so we can have foresight rather than having a number that's kind of surprised on us. I know that we did the figure previously when we did the Three Waters through the last government regime, and we had some sort of parameters of where that sat, but I'd be interested to have a follow through and find an update on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, we will vote. Has passed 16 votes for and none against. All right, we move through to number 19. We're getting towards the end of our one, and this is around the Palmerston North Performing Arts Trust Annual Report and Annual Accounts 24-25, and just have our Governance Manager Hannah White speak to that. That's 321 of your papers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Elected members, this is very much an information report for your eyes about what the Trust has been doing and highlights of 3 grants that it gave out in the last financial year. I don't have anything else to say to this report, but with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to use the microphone to speak back to the remuneration report, which you dealt with earlier this morning. There was an omission in Table 1, which you agreed by resolution, and it would be my recommendation, the omission is mine, that we do amend that resolution today during the meeting so that I can submit it to the Remuneration Authority by Friday's deadline. That omission has been brought to my attention by my team. My apologies. Table 1 listed the chairs for monthly chairs, quarterly chairs, but omitted the Hearings Committee chair. So I would like to recommend that you resolve to add the line that's on the screen, estimated up to 5 hours per month for Hearings Committee, in the bottom of that table under committee chairs. So that is on page 37 of your agenda. Now, to bring your attention to this, because this is very rare that we would ever do this, you have a standing order that governs this process that says that if new information is brought to the meeting, you may alter your resolution. The new information is that I have omitted it, and it should be included. And under standing orders, you do need 75% of those voting and present to agree to that. So in this case, 12 of you would need to agree that motion. So sorry to bring 2 pieces of business to the one item, but I think it would be prudent to do that now.
Okay, all right, we'll deal with the performing arts. Oh, no, I suppose we deal with this one first because it's on the screen. So we've got the amendment to table 1, and this is around going back to your pay, and it's the addition of the hours for the hearings committee. Now, Hannah, you were saying we have to do a vote first to get this back on the table, is that right? Oh. Okay, we've got to get a 75% to get this over the line. Okay, all right, I think that's explanation that makes sense. I'm happy to move it, seconded by Councillor Bowen. Is there any comments to it? Councillor Naylor.
No, sorry, it's not a comment. I'm just really trying to fit it in. See, does this just relate to the chair of the hearings committee? Because it doesn't say chair there. Do we
Correct, it's the section of the table that refers to chairs, sorry. So table 1 has 2 columns in it, or 2, not columns, the opposite.
I'm looking
horizontal lines. The second one is the committee chairs, and at the very bottom on the right, you've got 30 hours, 15 hours, and
So it slots
would like
into
to
that.
recommend
It
5
slots
hours
into
at the very
that.
bottom.
All right.
Oh, okay, I'm with you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote. Can you vote, please? That's passed, 16-4, none against. So now we go back to number 19, which is around the Performing Arts Trust annual report and annual accounts. Are there any questions of the officer on that? Okay, there being none, we have a recommendation to council that we receive the Palmerston North Performing Arts Trust annual report financial statements, the year ending 30 June 2025, attachments 1-3. I'm happy to move it. Can I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Dennison. Colleagues, this is one of those trusts which has been bequested to us, and it's been around for nearly 50 odd years. And it gives out its money, its interest money to various organisations. It's small in nature, but does have quite a big impact for the sector. There's a number of different organisations they've received some money, and there will be an event I think you've all been invited to in early December. Yeah, early December. Where there'll be some acknowledgements of these different groups that have received some funding. So it'd be great to see some of you there. All right. Have I stolen your thunder, Councillor? All right. We're going to vote. And it has passed 16 votes for and none against. Okay, we just need to now move to a recommendation to move into part 2 and confidential. And the reasons for that are around negotiations and commercial activities. I'm happy to, with the 2 items, number 22 and 23 on the table, I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dennison. Are there any comments? Councillor Wood.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, not a comment, question before we move into part 2. Is there a reason there's no council work schedule in the papers?
Yeah, because we've only just voted on how we're going to operate.
Okay, so that'll come through the next one.
Yeah, that will come through next time. Good. No, I had another councillor ask that last night, so yeah. One moment, caller, we will get there. All right, can we vote, please? Okay, that is passed 16 votes for and none against. So colleagues, we're going to have a break now. We'll be back in the chamber at 25:02. I won't be in the chair. The Deputy Mayor will be because I have expressed an interest in one of them. I just have a family member that's in the organisation, that's all. I will be in Wellington too. I've got to go to Wellington, so I will